What's going on YouTube? Today I thought I would just make a quick list of 10 very easy aquarium plants. Most of these will thrive in just under a standard aquarium light with pretty much nothing else. I would always suggest getting a liquid aquarium fertilizer and dosing it per instructions weekly. There's some cheap ones like tetrafluoride and stuff. They're quite cheap, so it's not a big cost to keep your plants really healthy. Alright, so first we have Java fern. It grows off a rhizome, which is just like a stick that the roots come off of. Alright, and whenever you plant this, you can plant the roots down in the substrate, but you don't want to plant the rhizome because over time it will actually rot out and kill the plant. So what I like to do is I kind of take these roots and I kind of wrap them around a stone or a piece of wood, and you can tie it with fishing line or sewing thread. You can use a dab of hot glue, or not hot glue, excuse me, super glue, and you just kind of hold it on there until it dries, and actually it'll be perfectly fine. Most super glue, as far as I'm aware, is safe for aquariums. I use just the regular dollar store brand, and it works great. You can even apply it to like driftwood when it's wet. It actually will dry faster. Alright, and it propagates by, pulling it apart. So if you were to like tear it apart, or little babies grow in the leaves. I don't know what triggers them to grow in the leaves. I have some tanks where they grow constantly on the leaves, and other tanks where they just kind of grow on themselves. But they just kind of attach the leaves, and I wait until they're a little bigger, and then I pull them off and just shove them into like a crease of a log. As long as they're wedged in there, they'll usually take root over time. Alright, so that's number one. Alright, number two, Java moss. It's pretty much the same deal. You don't want to bury it in the substrate. You can tie it to wood and stones, and it'll attach itself and actually kind of carpet itself. I will actually take you to look at the aquarium right now. Alright, as you can see, there's just Java moss growing all over this piece of driftwood. All I did is I found a little crevice in the driftwood, and I added a small pile of the moss. I just kind of shoved it in the crack, and this is a few months later. It just kind of creeped along the log, and after it kind of creeps and gets everywhere it can, it'll kind of bush up, and you can just pull it off and sell it, give it away, use it somewhere else. It's one of those plants I'd probably never be without again. Alright, and one more thing I noticed about Java moss. It doesn't seem to really like heat. So I'd say anything above 80 is probably too much for it. It'll kind of brown and die off. It'll be very slow because it's a very hardy plant. It tolerates freezing. I've dried it out, and it's been dry on stones for 6 months. When I put the stones back in the aquarium, it came back to life. So it's a very tough plant. Alright, number three, Anubius. This is Anubius Nana Golden. As you can see, the leaves are kind of golden, the new ones anyway. It's different than all my other Anubiuses, but it comes in many varieties. There's broad leaf, wrinkled leaves. There's so many different kinds. I couldn't possibly list them all here because I don't know them all offhand. But this is another one of those ones that does really well in low light. Actually in higher light, since it's so slow growing, the leaves will actually get covered in algae. They'll get hair algae on it or slime algae or something. But it's a good candidate for a normal aquarium with a normal light. You might even be able to get away with like a desk lamp or even just in a window. Great plant. It'll actually flower. It'll send up a stalk with a little kind of looks like an ear of corn, but it's white. It's kind of funny, and it'll just kind of rot off after a few days. But it's a great plant. The way you propagate it, at least how I've always done it, is whenever it gets big, you just snap it in half and you have 2 plants. Or you could cut it up into 10 pieces, I guess, if you wanted. Alright, number 4. African water fern. This is actually a poor example. You can see this one's damaged. But this is the only one that was not attached to something in my aquarium. There seems to be two different leaf forms of this plant. I'll actually take you to the aquarium in a minute and show it to you in there. And it also grows babies on the end of the leaves, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's related to the Java fern. You can see the other one there. Yeah, this one was just kind of floating around, that's why it looks so bad. Alright, and as you can see here, this is the other leaf pattern. I don't know how well it's going to show up on the camera, but I'm trying. It's quite a bit different, and it thrives. It likes water flow, but in this aquarium, it literally only has 2 sponge filters, and it's doing great. It's a real slow grower, but it's pretty much covered this 20 long. I probably had it for about 3 years. I've trimmed off a bunch and sold a bunch, so I imagine you can cover an aquarium in a few years with it. That's real hardy, doesn't care about light that much. So, African water fern, another good one. I actually also think it goes by the name Bloptis, African Bloptis fern, or something along that lines. I hope I'm saying that right. Alright, and up next, water wisteria. This plant is actually one of my favorites, because if you grow it in different temperatures and different water pH and chemistry and makeup and stuff, the leaves will actually change. Sometimes it's real broad, sometimes they're real narrow, real spiky. The immersed growth of this plant, they're real like football shaped leaves, and they all just kind of, it changes every time. I don't know if you could put it in 2 aquariums side by side, and I bet it would grow differently even if they were set up exactly the same. It's one of them really unique plants. A lot of fish really like to eat this one though. I quite often see angelfish pluck this thing apart. Snails tend to eat it if they get real hungry. If you have any kind of fish like a silver dollar or something, this thing would be destroyed. It would never make it. Alright, up next, Amazon sword. This is a really tiny one. This is actually a flame sword. I don't have any small Amazon swords. All mine are large. And I didn't want to uproot one and go through all that trouble. Alright, so we got a small sword here. I would say get some root tabs with these, if that's the only plant you have. They do well in low light, but the substrate needs to be enriched in some way, whether it be soil. You can even grow them in like a flower pot with soil in there, and just cover the top of substrate so the soil will come out, and they will do great in there for years. This is another one of the plants that well, my silver dollars love to eat the sword plants. But it's very tough. A lot of cichlids won't mess with it, Africans. It's a great plant. And they get very large, so this wouldn't be something for, I'd say anything under a 20-gallon tall, because they get very big. Alright, and next, the cryptocoryans. This is just a regular green crypt. There's probably 100 varieties of crypt. Maybe not quite that many. But they are very easy to grow. They like low light, but they're another nutritious substrate plant. They spread by kind of like runners. You can see this here. This probably would have been another plant if I wouldn't have pulled it up. There's 2 plants on here currently. Actually, whenever you move them, they melt. The leaves will wilt away and die. Most of the time they come back. I've never had one of these flower, but I'm sure they can in the immersed conditions. They come in all shapes and sizes. If you want a tall one, there's some smaller ones like Cryptocorin parva. I say small. A lot of people like to try to make a carpet out of that. Alright, next we have jungle val. This is a really tall plant. This is actually a kind of a baby one. I've had some of the leaves get like 8 foot long, and I'm not joking. If you let them scrape the top of the water for long enough, they will grow from one end to the other. I just kind of ripped them off, which isn't good, but because a leaf will eventually die. But they grow so fast, it doesn't really matter. I've grown these in a 29-gallon aquarium with an old light. I mean, the bulb was even old. It was just some off color. This is actually the first plant I ever kept. I thought it was neat that I grew a jungle of grass. This is another tough one that most cichlids won't mess with. Large cichlids will probably pull it out or dig it out. But most plant-eating fish, Africans and stuff, really won't mess with this one too much because it's pretty tough. And I actually probably wouldn't think it would taste good. Alright, and these are in no real particular order other than the Java fern and the moss and the Anubius. Alright, up next is Bokoba. This stuff smells great. I don't know if you ever pick up some of this. This is not moneywort. This is, I guess, Bokoba Carolina or maybe Australia. I don't know. I don't remember which one it is, unfortunately. I've never been able to really determine because every time I've ever bought Bokoba from another seller or something, it's not the same as this one. And I know for a fact this is not moneywort. But anyway, it smells great. Kind of has like a minty smell to it, especially after you cut it. It smells really good. So if you ever get this, take a whiff before you put it in your aquarium. It grows in low light, it grows tall. I guess it can suffer if it's shaded too much, so give it as much light as possible, but it will grow very well in low light conditions. It seems to like slightly cooler water. This is another one I wouldn't put in a discus tank. Alright, last but definitely not least, hornwort. This one's kind of a floater. It doesn't get any kind of roots. It just kind of floats around it. You can plant it like a stem, but eventually the part that you planted will rot off and they'll end up floating again, but you can just replant it. And, well, we're talking a few weeks. It just kind of floats around. It's very good at soaking up excess nutrients, and especially with it floating, it'll grow very well in most aquariums because it's right under the light. One thing I don't like about hornwort is if you don't take care of it, it'll kind of break apart into pieces and make a mess. But after you get it adjusted to your tank parameters, excuse me, it actually softens up. It's not like the stuff grown in ponds. Some people call it soft hornwort. I've never really seen a difference. And another thing is it really likes to collect hair algae. It will outcompete every other algae, but hair algae will directly grow on this plant. This is a very small piece, obviously, but it also can reach 8-foot lengths. When you want to propagate this guy, you literally just find a section and snap it off. Now you get two. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. If there's anything you think I missed, leave it in the comment section below, please. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'd also really appreciate that. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.